What destroys generational wealth, right? Intergenerational wealth or generational wealth. I've spoken a lot about generational wealth, creating generational wealth, why you should do, and how it helps. But now I'll tell you, I've seen generational wealth being created, I've seen it being passed on, and I've seen it being destroyed also. So, how does generational wealth get destroyed? First, not passing on the financial management skills of the family. There are people, when they die, they have no clue how their children are going to manage it, right? So I've done a video on this family where this girl had no clue how much money her father had, right? Mother had died earlier, father had left a huge fortune. Huge fortune, I wouldn't say. I mean, they anyway had enough money between husband and wife, but she thought they would have something like 30-40 lakhs. It turned out to be at 3-4 crores. They had no clue about that from his lifestyle or anything. They couldn't guess. So first is, when you don't teach your children how to manage money, that is one way of destroying family money. So it is not just the money that you pass on, it is also the money management skills that you have to pass on. You have to sit and communicate with your children about how that money has to be managed, what it has to be done, why it is lying in a particular account, what are the tax implications, what is clubbing, why you should be worried about wealth tax. Right now we don't have wealth tax in an impactful manner. We don't have gift tax in an impactful manner, and we don't have estate duty. Chances are all the three will come together, because you can avoid one by doing the other. So gift tax, wealth tax, estate duty will come in India. It's a matter of time. So knowing how to tackle the tax laws, what to do for tax planning, tax harvesting, right? All these things are very important to be taught, and only you have to teach it. The world is not here to teach this to your children. No relationship manager, no wealth manager. I have not seen anyone teach all this to their investors. It is for the investor to know it himself or herself. So yes, a lack of basic financial skills is a big wealth destroyer, which means obviously poor financial management, because they didn't know how to do it. Next is when they know how to do it, but then they dispute, because each person thinks that it is my right to get more. For whatever reasons, they assume that, oh, I am the son, I should get more than the daughter. I am the daughter, my father spent so much on my brother's education, so I should be compensated more, etc., etc. All these disputes happen. So if you don't communicate properly who is getting how much and how much each person should get, and what they should do with it, that creates another problem, right? So family disputes, one bad marriage, or one wrong company, some mistake, maybe it's a mistake, doesn't matter, but then if they come back to it, and they can destroy family wealth. Also, it happens that when you don't make the rules of how the family wealth will be used. Take a very simple case, a family with a 25 crore net worth, which is not in business, right? It's lying in various places. It's being managed by one son, and one of the brother's children gets involved in some drug problem, or some betting problem, and has to pay 50 lakhs as ransom. It's fairly obvious that children from rich families will get into big problems. So and they find that the person managing the money thinks that this money should not be paid. So should it be paid, should it not be paid? All these are rules which have to be made way before such a problem happens. So some kind of documentation is important. I mean, for 25 crores people don't do that kind of documentation, but for 5,000 crores people do that kind of documentation. So learn some documentation. If you know the documentation, then it helps, right? Third is a big number of children being born to one person can also create ill will, right? So for example, if there are two brothers, each gets 10 crores, one has one kid, one has 4 kids, then obviously the denominator is higher in the second family, so they somehow think that they should get a bigger share of everything. There's no logic. Don't ask me for logic. There's no logic. But then they start saying, oh no, but he has got this, I don't have this, so I should get more, and these kind of things. So then they go to court, they fight, they cheat, they do all those things, and that is another way of destroying family. Obviously one bad divorce, and that can lead to destruction. Another destruction which is very which you didn't know such a thing will happen, is something which happened in Kashmir. Whenever people got money, they added rooms to their house. So you had a 1 BHK, then, or rather maybe 2-3 room house, then you added one more house, one more room, right? You kept adding up and on the sideways. Land was not so much of an issue in the 1960s and 70s of Kashmir. Then in the 80s and 90s, when they were driven away, the only asset that they had was a house, which was maybe a 15 room house or a 14 room house where 3 brothers and their children were all living. That was the only place, because whenever they had a surplus, they just went and built a room. Maybe they bought some more furniture, they had a better quality of life, or maybe they had a good garden, fencing, all that. So all the money was spent there, and suddenly one day you have to leave that and come. Now this is not, this is something which you have to think about when you are doing assets, the lack of diversification, right? If you don't diversify your portfolio, you run this risk. So only equity, only debt, only single equity, that is in one business we have put so much money and that business is doing well, like, and suddenly that business goes, I mean, there is cheating or something, and you don't know as a family how to protect it, so you didn't know how to do it. So lack of diversification, again it comes from the first point, that you didn't know how to manage the money well. But yes, lack of diversification of assets, or lack of proper asset allocation, it could be a big cause. And not knowing when to require cash flow, how to spend, how to use the money, whether to spend only on children's weddings or children's education, where you should not, medical emergencies, how much each person should pay, whether the HUF should pay for the medical insurance of everybody, so that the family wealth does not get dissipated. Of course, inadequate estate planning, when one person dies intestate and says all my money should go to my accountant or my MFD or something like that, how will the others react? Will they just give it away, or will they dispute and say, oh no, this was not planned for, we can't give, and fight and go to court? That can be one dispute again. Then just sheer increase in size of the family and longevity, these two things can also destroy wealth, because if they said that all the expenses, medical expenses, should be borne from the corpus, and the corpus itself is not growing enough. The corpus has to grow at about 6-7% pre-tax, and at least at 5% post-tax, for it to be sustained against inflation, for meeting their expenses. Normally what happens in these families, the next generation earns much more and actually adds to the corpus. So this is not really a problem. But somewhere these, if you avoid these things, the chances are that the intergenerational wealth will keep growing and goes from one generation to the other. Thank you.